So you're telling me they can't swim, despite evidence pointing to the contrary? You've got to be kidding me. Alright, well, new information, need to update old lore, but that doesn't mean I won't bemoan how ridiculous this is, and why, I guess it can make sense, but ultimately, So, as a meteor crashes down on our water-laden planet, a group of creatures would be released on the human population that the local law enforcement, militaries, and world governments couldn't overcome. Because of their thick armoring, they were immune to most, if not all, countermeasures implemented, except for one that would seem, well, honestly the most obvious, but because they didn't use it, this would ultimately begin decreasing the human population. It became quite apparent quickly that these beasts could not see the world around them, but instead would hunt by sound. Any land-based organism that made noise and was not capable of flight would be eradicated. This walking ecological catastrophe would destroy the populations of not just Homo sapiens, but most creatures that would be in the same habitat. So today we will be talking about the Death Angels from A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2, The Hairy Boy Boogaloo. Also, before we start, I mentioned this in my last episode, but YouTube did a massive purge of subs. I've seen it before, and the comments actually confirmed it. People got straight up unsubbed, so if you want to check, you might have actually been legitimately unsubscribed from this channel. YouTube, never change. So as per usual, up on screen, you'll see a timestamp if you would like to bypass a summary, because obviously there's going to be spoilers in this, and even in the more sciencey portion as well, there's still going to be spoilers. So if you don't want to see that, I'm not really sure why you clicked this. But for all those who want to jump ahead, go there and you can bypass the summary or just check the chapters in the bar. For everyone else, let's get to why, just like in Doom Eternal, likely Australia is once again spared a terrible fate simply because it's already a hell on Earth down there. We open up our story with a small town. Just prior to the outbreak of these creatures, the father from the first movie has gone to town to pick up some food. As he enters the store, a news announcement is playing on TV. In Shanghai, something has landed in the middle of a plaza and exploded. Not understanding what it is, no information is being successfully sent anywhere. Heading to the baseball field, it would appear that we are following the same family as before. Marcus walks out to the plate and totally botches swinging the bat, and I can relate because my grandma told me one time that if I played baseball, I would end up like the kid who got hit in the chest and his heart stopped, so that ended any chance of my pro career. As the baseball games continue on, eventually Emmett's radio begins messing up. As Marcus looks on, a giant fireball appears in the sky. What's interesting is, usually these things are extremely fast, like it barely takes any time for them to plunge through the atmosphere. But whatever it is begins breaking apart, but no major damage appears to be done. At this point, the game is over and everyone nopes out of there. Heading home, Lee talks to Emmett and confirms that nothing is going on at a nearby base, and on Main Street, all the dogs seem to be uneasy and barking at whatever's going on. Lee gets out of his truck to talk to a cop just as the attack starts and then flips the cruiser. At this point, all hell breaks loose as Evelyn gets stuck in traffic, and while sitting there, a Death Angel attacks the car in front of her, and then she almost gets got by a bus as it has been not really hijacked by Death Angel, but the driver's pretty much been annihilated. The town is in complete chaos as multiple Death Angels begin cutting people down left, right, and center. After entering a restaurant, a woman leaves her phone on, which then rings, attracting the aliens. And I gotta tell you, a lot of these hits really don't look that lethal, just really painful. It becomes a mad dash where finally the cop makes a last stand against one of the creatures, but to no avail due to its thick armoring. We now jump into the events just after the ending of A Quiet Place. Also a break off that if A Quiet Place 3 doesn't have the E in place replaced with a 3, we have failed as a species. Evelyn with her husband now resting comfortably in the digestive tract of one of the Death Angels, or probably not, which we'll discuss later, realizes that she needs to GTFO as everything they have, like their farm, home, and bunker, are either flooded or on fire. Reagan goes back to where her dad was working to pick up a map to figure out where the others may be if they are going to get help. She also loads up an amp to use with her cochlear device to persuade the Teethy boys not to eat them. While Evelyn is in the bunker, she eventually finds oxygen canister that she was looking for, as she needs that to keep the child sealed away if they have any chance of surviving after they leave. Reagan lights a fire on the silo as someone in the distance answers, to which they now have a heading on where to go. As the family keeps walking, they eventually come to the last of the sand that they ever put down, meaning that they are going to have to start crunching some leaves out here, just raw dogging it. Heading into the fences around an area, they eventually find that it has been booby trapped, with Evelyn having actually set off one of these traps. As they take off, Marcus then straight up steps in a bear trap, and his screams alert one of the creatures to their specific location after the beer bottles gave away their initial position. After finishing off the creatures with the old force multiplier slash sonic multiplier combination, it's apparent someone has been watching them through a scope. He meets up with them around a corner with one of the creatures on their tail. They eventually are able to out-juke the alien to get into the vault to escape it. Once in the vault, they realize it's actually Emmett, but he says that they can't stay, he doesn't have enough food and water. Showing Emmett the baby, he begrudgingly agrees to let them stay, and considering Marcus is injured AF, it's not like they were really going far anyhow. Oh, it also should be noted that the vault is actually airtight, so no sound actually escapes it. The compound has pretty sweet setup. 3 feet of concrete above means that the creatures need to be directly above to hear anything, which, good God, that is some good hearing. Also, just as a side note, did you know that Earth emits sound? How these creatures can hear anything over the hum of the planet is beyond me. Certain frequencies must be what they are really looking for, but I would have to assume that they can actually hear the planet. Which, now that we are actually on that side tangent, this noise that Earth emits is interesting for several reasons, but the main one is we may have to actually find a way to replicate it if we ever want to travel into space to any far extent. Without it, our bodies seem to enter a state of high anxiety, and astronauts on board the International Space Station have stated that they seem to struggle for no reason until they discovered that if you can't hear the noise that Earth emits, it does increase your anxiety. But back to A Quiet Place, apparently Emmett has seen the fire every night but never decided to actually go check on them because, as he puts it, there's people just not worth saving, and he didn't know which type they were. While discussing these people, Marcus hears a radio signal playing music. Emmett says the valley actually blocks the signal, that's why they never heard it. Evelyn thinks there might be more people, but Emmett is convinced there's nothing left and he wants the family gone by tomorrow while he goes to check the perimeter. In the middle of the night, Regan then wakes up Marcus. Is it Regan or Reagan? I'm gonna go with Reagan for Reaganomics. She says that there's an island nearby. If she follows the train tracks, she can get there within a day. Marcus says that he will tell, but Reagan says nah fam. Her plan is to broadcast the feedback noise to all radios to allow anyone to have the ability to fight back against the Death Angels. The next morning, Marcus wakes up to water dripping and then finds a note from his sister saying to keep listening as she goes to try to secure a way to stop these creatures. As Emmett returns to his camp, Evelyn then says that he has to go find Reagan. Lee is gone and can't do it, and she has to stay with the baby. So after like a super mega guilt trip that Evelyn lays on Emmett, he eventually does leave to go look for her. As Reagan walks along, she comes across a train station. All that's left to people are their shoes, as presumably they were dragged off by these creatures. Entering one of the train cars, she finds the desiccated bodies of the passengers. Having walked all this way, her feet are bleeding and she needs to get a first aid kit. Going to the front of the train, she finds one and then grabs it, but the conductor's body falls back and scares her, which alerts a nearby Death Angel. Using her feedback defense, she wings the creature but doesn't end it. Before it can attack, however, Emmett gets a shot off, ending it and then saving her before she's taken out. Exiting the train, they get away just before a bunch of the other creatures arrive to investigate the noise. Emmett attempts to talk to Reagan, but she's deaf and she can't hear him, so she tells him to enunciate so that she can read his lips. Reagan attempts to tell him that what she's doing is important, and he insists that he's taking her home, but he's also kicking them out, so why does it matter? And she brings up this point. Well, because it doesn't matter. She's able to straight up convince him to come along to help her on this plan that literally nobody thought of. Like literally, people in the military who are fairly intelligent enough and also get paid to come up with creative ways to overcome barriers didn't figure this out. I mean, sonic devices, which we have now, would absolutely have been used is all I'm saying. Also, back at the bunker, Evelyn checks the oxygen tank and sees that it's getting lower. The next morning, Reagan wakes up and reaches for a cochlear device. Realizing it's gone and not finding Emmett anywhere, she freaks out and runs outside. I'm guessing she assumed that he just like noped out and took the device for himself, which why would he do that? Who knows? I mean, he only has one bunker, so it's not like she couldn't just wander on back. Regardless, he returns back, so it's all good. Now Evelyn is trying to fly the coop as well. The baby gets left with Marcus, and man, that's always a blast. None of the fun of making a baby, but all the responsibility. Evelyn says that she will be back and that he just needs to breathe. Really, all she does is make a pilgrimage to her other son's memorial and then leaves her wedding ring there, and I don't know, I'd probably hold on to mine, but maybe that's just me. She's also heading back to the store in order to find medicine and oxygen for the baby. As Emmett and Reagan look over the bridge, they spot an island in the distance with boats. Knowing that they need to head there, they attempt to walk through a town, which they have the fog machines working triple overtime, but being a coastal town, they approach the docks to commandeer one of the boats and leave to check out the island. Moving on to the docks, however, Emmett sees something, but it was too quick. So this is about to do a ton of jumping back and forth, just as a heads up, because they got like 3 subplots going at once. Simultaneously, for some god-awful reason, Marcus is walking around at a creepy factory at night by himself, and Evelyn is at the store picking up first aid materials for her son's wounds so they don't become infected. So everything is about to go to crap at once. On the docks, a girl sits with her head down. Marcus finds Emmett's makeshift hospital room for his wife, and then finds her body is still very much there, which freaks him out. As Emmett approaches the girl, she puts a rope around his neck with bells so that he won't move, lest he be attacked by the creatures. So these are the people that he was talking about that are not worth saving. After finding Emmett's wife, Marcus then falls back, making a ton of noise, alerting the Death Angels. Moving back to the docks have eyes, Reagan and Emmett become surrounded as Marcus is running from the Death Angel. Emmett attempts to stop the group from hurting Reagan, which, okay, quick question. Why are their eyes all bloodshot? I still haven't figured out that one. Like, they look kind of like deranged, but it's not really for any particular reason. Like, why do they look like this? As Evelyn gets back to the bunker, she discovers the bunker is under attack. Oh, that vault that was airtight, well, Marcus was using his lighter in there, so basically he just used up all the air. Nice going, bro. So as I guess the leader of the Unsavables inspects Reagan, he begins walking off with her to, probably eat her, I would imagine. They seem to be like that kind of group, getting some real Last of Us 1 vibes here. You know, the good Last of Us. Back at the bunker, Evelyn begins setting up traps, and then Marcus keeps hyperventilating, literally the last thing you want to do when you have low air, save your air, and Evelyn lets out a shot to attract the creature, and then blows up an oxygen tank, engulfing it in flames. At the dock, Emmett signals for Reagan to dive, which he learned at the baseball game from the beginning of the movie, and she does as Emmett attacks the leader and pins him to a pole, ringing the bells and attracting the creature to their location. He jumps into the water as the creature begins ripping apart its manwich. Okay, so Emmett is like in the water, being choked by the noose around his neck. He has a knife in his hands, but struggles against the rope. Like, dude, cut the line. This part bothered me more than you would think. Eventually, the creature does cut the rope for him, and he's freed. Evelyn enters the vault concurrently to find Marcus has passed out as Emmett surfaces, and he sees a Death Angel all over the boat. It jumps into the water and then freaking drowns. Mega bro moment, F's in the chat for my first video, despite it making the perfect amount of sense, but I'll complain/talk about that later. The boat is then sent adrift after another manages to jump on it, and you're never gonna believe where it heads. Luckily though, Reagan and Emmett get there first and make landfall. Not knowing if the people there are just cannibals and weirdos, they decide to stealth around and scope the place out. As they do though, Emmett figures out pretty quickly that these are actually just normal people, and they decide to approach the group where they are met on friendly terms. So we get some background on what happened. Once the National Guard figured out that they couldn't swim, they decided to start loading people onto boats. But once the first boat got out, people started pushing and screaming, which attracted the creatures. Out of the 12 boats, only 2 made it out. So this group is presumably the first 2 boats. So Emmett has a conversation with, alright, so this dude's name is literally just Man on Island, by the way. So Emmett tells Man on Island of the plan that they have, and he agrees to hook the cochlear device up to the radio. As really, why wouldn't they? There's literally no downside to trying. As Emmett goes out to the beach to have a good cry about his family, he eventually hears something rattling. And rounding the corner, well, would you look at that? The one boat with a Death Angel on it appears to have landed here of all places. Technically that makes sense, I reckon. Though if it's been here for a while, why are they just now having to deal with it? Everyone's been making noise. Man on Island and Emmett just had like an entire conversation. As Emmett runs to warn people, the creature then runs out and hits Man at well. A bunch of people at this point get got. Man on Island hides his son on Island and a severely traumatized boy who just watched his dad get cut down like a plebeian. And then Man on Island jumps into his 1975 Oldsmobile Delta 88 Royale convertible to attract the creature, which ends up working. As the alien attacks the car, they then fly off down the road towards the radio station to enact a plan. Reaching the radio station, Man on Island becomes concerned that family on Island might not be safe. He's worried he lost the Death Angel on Island, but he did not. The creature grabs him and pulls him under the garage door, ending him and this joke that I've been saying. The creature then bursts through the wooden door, trapping Reagan and Emmett. And what looks like they're passing the devil's lettuce back and forth, but it's actually just oxygen, Evelyn and Marcus are sharing an oxygen tank in order to survive the vault. Marcus still has his head set on listening for the signal so that they can use it against the creatures. Eventually, as Emmett and Reagan move through the radio station, they're able to find the broadcasting area. Also, someone should tell Wow Such Gaming to clean up his work area next time. Back at the compound, Evelyn opens up the door to get air and collects the materials that she got at the store. But while she does, the Death Angel stalking them has returned. Back at the radio station, Reagan opens a door, which alerts the creature that they are in there because one of the hinges squeaks. The creature then attacks Emmett and injures him. As Evelyn decided to run instead of walk, the creature now corners them in the vault but can't fit in. Eventually, the Death Angel corners Reagan as she uses her device. The signal is broadcasted to all radios in the area as Marcus is able to push the creature back with the frequency. Reagan is able to jam a conduit pipe into the head of the creature that was attacking them, ending it in the process, which apparently their heads are really soft because that didn't look like that big of a hit. Marcus also domes the one attacking him, showing that if you can just get past their hard candy shell, there's some gooey goodness underneath, just waiting to absorb some lead. And we end the movie by the cochlear device continuing to send a signal. And if you don't think there won't be a third one where the military finally pulls its heads out of its areas, then I'll have some of the oxygen you are passing back and forth. So first things first, what in the sweet hell? They can't swim, yet we saw how seamless these creatures get into the water in the first one. Well, here's the main issue with it, and we can kind of go ahead and get that out of the way. Any creature not familiar with water would not act like that. It's sort of like when you have a group of cows and they come across a wet road, which I think there's like a YouTube video on this, but they will think it's a river rather than solid and won't step on it without really any apprehension. The Death Angel coming across water seemed to act like it knew what water was and then slipped in and under the water, showing it had experience in water. Now, this could be for a few reasons, honestly. With the addition of new information comes the need to form new ideas and how this may have affected them. With the first movie, I hypothesized that because of their lack of eyes and swimming ability, they may have actually been a part of a planet whose surface was covered with a frozen ocean that at a deep enough level would have turned back into liquid due to geothermal heat. Maximum oof on that front. But if that's not the case, I see two other possibilities which may explain how they were able to actually traverse the interstellar regions of space, that being their chitinous armoring. The first possibility, and to me the least likely based on their biological evidence displayed by the aliens, is that their planet had very little water and they existed on a dark planet. Existing on a dark planet would mean their eyes would be virtually useless. However, the issue is water would be frozen. Now, existing on a planet like this would not likely give them all the traits that we have seen, but it would give them a few, and if the orbital path of the planet was elliptical, this would mean the possibly water would actually thaw back out into small pools, allowing these creatures to have an understanding of water, but they could not swim in it. The main issue I see with this is this still wouldn't fully explain why no eyes would form at all. Plus, the extreme variability in temperatures on a planet that went from complete darkness to light would honestly produce extreme barriers to complex multicellular life, to the point that likely it wouldn't arise at all. It could be that the planet may have been tidally locked with the stars, and these creatures simply evolved on the back dark side of the planet and never ventured to the other side. But another issue with this is that the atmosphere would be almost completely different than Earth's. Like, an atmosphere with a tidally locked planet is super volatile and likely would not have the chemical composition where it could go from their planet to our planet successfully. It's quite apparent that these creatures breathe oxygen much like humans do, and because they can apparently drown, making the islands a safe point for humanity, this would mean that they actually do require air much like humans do in a capacity that they can't just survive for long periods of time without it. Which presents an interesting issue, doesn't it? How do they survive out in space? I mean, on the surface of a rock that is burning or exposed to cosmic rays, or even just in the vacuum of space, how would they ultimately be able to do this if they are so weak that they can drown in water? Well, this leads us to our most likely possibility, which explains why these creatures are the way they are, but even to that point, it may be a case of evolutionary bottleneck problems that allowed only for certain traits to flourish. So again, the point of science is, if you are wrong, screw it, you change the way you think. Too many people let their ego get wrapped up in the scientific process. Now, if you go and look at the comments, yes, I will still argue a point, but if I'm just dead wrong, I'm just wrong. So I would have to say now, these creatures may have actually existed in caves that could have riddled the planet, and I believe this to be true for a multitude of reasons. So let's cover the supporting evidence that we have seen. The first piece of evidence would be the absence of eyes. Now, as stated previously, this could happen on a planet with low sunlight conditions, but inside of a cave, animals that dwell within usually have poor sight to no sight. And I bet you think I'm going to mention bats, don't you? Well, actually, bats have pretty okay eyesight. They just hunt by sound and echolocation preferably, which we will cover in a second, but concerning specifically lack of sight. This version of the animal is known as a troglobite. These creatures are native cave dwellers. They live within the dark zones of caves and have developed specific organs to hunt, while other senses may not be necessary, like sight, have degenerated away or disappeared completely. Now, the interesting aspect of the Death Angel species is that their bodies are covered with a thick black armoring that is chitinous. In species specifically within caves that are lifelong residents, their bodies are pinkish white in coloring, and this is because they do not have to be protected from the sun's rays. When we look under the chitinous armoring of the Death Angel, we see this coloring, but this is most likely due to the actual armoring over the top of the creature. However, why would the armoring of the Death Angel itself need to be darker in coloring then, and what may have caused this? Don't you find it strange how these creatures were able to survive so long on a hunk of rock? Surely they would have starved over time, or turned on one another. So what may have happened early before the planet was destroyed? Well, it would appear to me that these creatures being cave dwellers would have riddled the planet in caves, as they seem very successful. Having adapted to caves, the reason they are in there may be something as simple as consuming the literal crust of the planet itself, which may explain why these creatures were in there to begin with, and would also show why they have other traits. So let me back up to the chitinous material point before we get too far out ahead of what I was originally saying. I believe now that the Death Angels were eating dirt, but they may have also been predators actively hunting something within the cave. They exist within the caves of a planet deep within the crust and eat minerals and materials that would be found in their armoring as well, and this is why they have such hard armoring and lead was not able to pierce it. On top of this, having armoring within a cave system would be very beneficial, because I don't know if you've ever been in a cave, but there are like a ton of jagged rocks in there. So being able to move and not like completely slice open your leg, definitely beneficial. With this armoring is literally because they have a ton of minerals hard as rocks built up within it. But if you think it's odd for animals to eat dirt, it's actually fairly common. Elephants, chimpanzees, parrots, and bats, specifically bats being the interesting aspect, eat dirt to acquire important minerals from their surroundings that they may actually not get from their prey. So it seems that consuming dirt is common amongst herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores. As they continue to live within the caves, I still believe that they were predators nonetheless, as mentioned previously. Caves, while being barren most of the time, are still capable of supporting life, but it's just like playing a game on Legendary rather than playing it on normal on the surface. With low nutrient levels of caves, animals have found ways to get around this issue by things like hibernation during low points of nutrition, eating things that you might not think that they should eat, or in general just lower metabolisms. The typical pathway on this planet is an animal that might exit the cave will eat. They will leave droppings that fungi and bacteria then grow on and then is eaten. Small animals will eat that fungi specifically, which then they will be eaten by bigger animals and so on and so forth. But the key point here is hibernation during low levels of nutrition and also slower metabolisms. With Death Angels, it would appear that they may leave the caves to hunt, but due to their lack of sight and increased hearing, they may actually prefer a prey species that may also reside within the caves themselves. And there's actually a few points that kind of show this. Now, being in a cave, you might be inclined to think it's a giant echoey area of nonstop sound, but the reality to all those who have been caving, they already know this, sound does not travel very far in the more confined areas. If someone rounds a corner and you yell to them, they may legitimately not hear you. This is how one time I actually got lost in a cave with a dead flashlight. I went off in an area myself, flashlight died, and this is the type of darkness that your eyes are literally searching for anything, any speck of light, but there is none. And honestly, it's a little panic inducing. So naturally, I figured, hey, I'll just yell out, but nobody could hear anything. Eventually, I remembered like a poor representation overhead view of the room, sort of like in my head, and then followed a wall before finding the entrance to this particular cavern. And then I was able to get out after I saw their flashlights in the distance. But literally, nobody heard me calling out. Sound does not travel well in a cave. That said, there likely is more to the Death Angels than just being able to hear within the cave itself. As Emmett put it, there's 3 feet of concrete above them. The creature would have to be directly overhead to hear them. That's interesting to say the least, isn't it? They're able to hear through what is essentially rock, which is exactly why I believe their hearing is as keen as it is. This species is literally hunting something within the walls of caves and needs to be able to hear the creatures moving through the rock. It could be a worm or some type of burrowing creature, and this would mean that the claws they have would be quite helpful in digging out prey, because if you notice, it kind of is shaped like a pickaxe, and they would also need to be incredibly strong to do so, as they could be hitting extremely hard rock, metals, and even superheated rock if they dig in the wrong direction. And this is how I believe the actual hunting abilities come into play, as they are predators hunting creatures in low nutrient environments. And this gives some credit to the idea that explains why they are super aggressive as well. Due to low nutrient areas, any other type of animal that may be hunting the same creatures these animals are attempting to eat is a direct threat to their own survival, so if they are heard, then they are destroyed. As for not eating the animals, let's just call it what it is. That kind of is strange, but there may be something to actually explain it. They appear to mutilate animals aggressively but do not eat them, or at least when it comes to humans, and this may not be be as odd as you think. So did you know, apparently, I don't know, but humans taste really nasty? This is why a lot of times sharks will actually do a test bite and then swim off. With pollution, what we eat, or in general, what we put into our bodies, to animals, humans are actually pretty disgusting tasting, apparently. So this may be why other animals seem to actually be eaten, sort of like the raccoon in the first one, because that thing is just smashed and grabbed, whereas humans are taste tested, and then the death angel goes, gross, and then walks off, leaving the body there. The next point about caves that I want to make is actually the possible reason how they could move in water, but would drown in deeper water. As we have seen with the death angel that goes into the basement of the bunker in the first movie, it seamlessly gets into the water and then moves about underneath it with no issue. This point has been brought up, 13,594,256 times on my channel, and it's because they can reach the bottom, but this would mean that they aren't accustomed to deep water. While underground lakes do exist within caves, a lot of the time it's really just shallow pools of water. The death angel would understand at this depth and would actually be able to enter the water, allowing it to hear whatever prey may be underneath, potentially even better than in air due to water's ability to transfer compressional waves quicker. However, deep water would present an issue to this creature as its body, due to the heavy armoring it possesses and the fact that its claws slice through water instead of presenting a flat surface for the water to be pushed against, means it would in fact drown in anything it couldn't stand up in. This may also be why they are able to affect electric fields and sense them as well, as mentioned in my first video. So I won't go too much into that, but using these small pools of water, they could break into the rock underneath, allowing the water to surround whatever creature is down there that they are trying to hunt, and then shock it, immobilizing it, while they continue to dig for it, which would be a fairly useful adaptation. So if I had to take a crack at it, I would also say being in a cave is sort of like a right place, right time scenario for when their planet was destroyed. After whatever impact blew apart the planet, any creature inside of the planet's crust may have been spared the heat wave blast that would fly across the planet, much like how mammals survived a lot of the fallout from the asteroid strike in the Yucatan Peninsula 65 million years ago that wiped out the dinosaurs. As the planet was blown apart on the opposite side of the planet, the compressional wave would have bulged the planet outwards, or at least the crust, and chunks would have flown off into the atmosphere, leaving the gravitational bonds of the planet entirely. Most of the death angels on that planet perished at this point, but small pockets clearly survived being blasted into space. Because of the cave structure they were in, it may have been sealed off like a time capsule, keeping breathable air within the cave system itself. Now, because of the adaptations of hibernating during low points of nutrients and slower metabolisms, the death angels would go into this hibernation because clearly their food source wasn't around. They could have also survived nutrient-wise by consuming the inside of the cave during periods of time when they actually woke up, or possibly even resorting to cannibalism should it get low enough. Or it's entirely possible they stayed in a state of extremely low metabolic activity for the entire time period. Drifting through space, this hibernation would have kept them alive, but also was still eating into the resources they may have had in their bodies, which could possibly be why they appear to be emaciated after being released on Earth. And this isn't really what they look like when they were on their original planet, but this is just a severely weakened version of them. But upon entering Earth's atmosphere, this is how they would have survived entry into our planet's atmosphere, as they were protected by a cave system which would begin burning up on the way down. As it did, whatever structure sealing them in the cave would begin breaking apart, introducing them to a, lucky for them, horrible for us, compatible atmosphere system. Waking back up due to the shock of hitting an atmosphere and the newfound rush of air and sound, the meteorite would break apart, seeding them across the planet, specifically which we have seen from China to Mexico and in North America, allowing them to spread across the Eurasia continent, Africa, North and South America, where they would eradicate ecosystems like you wouldn't believe. But likely there are swaths of safe areas. Judging by the entry by the meteorite, and it being maybe a few chunks, Australia and Indonesia would be on the backside of the planet during this time, and seeing as the meteor appears to be coming from actually the day side of the planet, or coming towards the day side of the planet, this would mean likely amongst those islands and Australia as well as New Zealand, they were untouched by the Death Angel horde that would be unleashed on the planet. But I am now certain that the people who made these movies are literally just making the movies despite everything I'm saying, so I can't wait to see A Quiet Place 3. The creatures will literally build freaking boats to sail to Australia and take it over simply because I said it was a safe area.